Alright, here we go. So in this video I wanted to get just right into it, save some editing time on cutting an intro. This is a 16 Grim Batol, really good run overall. The first play here really does set the pace for the entire dungeon. So I want to set my focus early on the dragon, and the first play is hide. I do want to get all of my dots out and the PI out before the hide. And on the hide is a great time to charge up a Radiance. So I make sure my target has a dot. I cast my shield for Words of the Pious. And here goes the rotation. A couple of executes on the front end. Noticing on the nameplates we're tracking Rive and the Umbral Wind. Those are the only two attacks we really need to track as a Disc Priest here. So in these higher keys, the Rive is the threat for the tank. So it is important to watch that timer. And that's for things like your barrier, your pain subs, even a Rapture Shield. So between now and the roleplay of the bird game, my game plan is drop both pain subs, a barrier, and a Rapture. Okay, so first pull down maybe took a little long, just being picky. Okay, and we're back to having Rives here. And yeah, if you're new to my channel, pay attention to some of these UI elements that I brought in recently. So like on our tank right now, he has like a little overlay on his bar. That is showing that he's actively in a defensive. And I think for tracking tank defensives, that's a little bit better than like the little icon glowing for Omni CD.
Breaking in 10.
And a little bit unconventional, but the play here is I'm mind controlling one of the casters just to kind of take them out of play.
Breaking.
Here it is coming back. We have another Rive incoming. There's our pain sub. And the name of the game here between the bird RP is just get as many rounds of rotation that you can. So I have a pet and rift right now. We definitely want to send that. Ramping atonements while we're dodging stuff. Here goes the pet and the rift. Here's our second PI. Indicator was that little glow on the nameplate until I cast the PI. Double executes and 8 torments for the win. Let's see if I get this last rift out. Yep, so I send the rift. And it missed the collapse. Rip. Okay, but here we go. The birds. So you really want to be careful with how you spend your ones here. When these guys are not stacked, it is not a good time for ones. 2 then 1. I'm sorry, 1 then 2, 1 then 2. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. So we did this key multiple times in a row. So we've really kind of honed our focus here. And I don't think our bird phase was perfect. And hard to say, I gave one of my ones to the casters at the end of this hall. Looks like maybe we needed one more one here. And then this dot that goes out, you can see it ahead of time. That's my targeted cast weak aura. Always a pretty good idea to shield that person. And here we go into a Rapture. So something else I'm thinking with Rapture here is I really want to play it for my pain subs cooldown. So getting a Rapture out, getting my dot spread, and I'm really just holding my cooldowns until after the first hide. I don't want to get interrupted. Leaving a renew on the tank last thing before the hide. Notice he is in his immune with that overlay. Okay, so here goes the pet and the rift. Let's see how many torments I get. 2 executes on the front, using focus targeting to fall back to my schism. There goes a PI and a pain sub. We're at 5 torments. We've got 6 and we had to quit. Okay, we have a rift to give. So we really just want to full send here. So here goes the rift. I have a pet coming up here. Let's see if I play another pet. I think I do. For this one, I might wait for the rift to come back for that torment. Yep, so here goes another pet and a rift. Should be able to get some executes here. Oh, nope. Okay, Lapaka is targeted. That's all good. He is atoned and flooding the group. And then, if anyone watching has any opinions on this, watching this back now for sure, this pull seems a little long. Does anyone else have thoughts on that? Early collapse on the rift. So in that pull, I think it was 3 rifts and 2 pets. So when you start getting into higher keys, you really just want to fit as many of those into a pull as possible. Doing your best not to bite yourself in the foot by not having a pet for the next pull. Okay, so in this type of fight, it is really important our raid defensives are staggered. So noticing right above my player frame, I have them grouped up for us. So first here is Zephyr, and on every single attack, you should be fading. And on these, the earth attack, if you're selected, like right here, you're going to need a personal shield. And all you have to do here is make sure you time your rift after damage lands, and then its collapse will cover the next attack too. So watch the timing here. This is a Rapture. And my Mind Blast is cast after the damage, so this rift will cover the next attack too. So notice the damage profile when the rift collapses. There's the damage, there's the collapse. And we just rinse and repeat. So for this one, I have 3 shields left. Those don't really ever go to tanks. I try and get a couple of my blasts before my radiance. If you miss the extension there, your collapse will not work right. That was another really good one. We had the damage followed by the collapse. Tank is immune on this one, and we're queuing in barrier. Fade is used, personal shield is on. Mind Blast casts after the damage. Radiance is already done, personal shield is on. Damage followed by collapse. Okay, so I do believe this one we're calling for personals and party. Yep. So Desperate Prayer and Fade and a personal shield are on. We are totally safe. Pet and Rift happen after the damage. A couple of smites followed by the Radiance. I'm selected again, so a personal shield. And we're back to Raptures. So looking back on this, Mind Blast after the damage. I could get a little better here with playing my Raptures, and that's food for thought on my next run here. But I should be leading into Raptures with a regular shield, so we get more coverage. So a regular shield followed by at least 2 Raptures. That way you can cover people in the party like the Paladin, who is a little extra tanky, without wasting the cooldown of the Rapture. Just give him a regular shield. Okay, here's our next PI. We're in execute range, so we're doing good. Collapse after the damage. That one was a precast of my Radiance into the Mind Blast after the damage. And let's pay attention here to the timing of the collapse. Happens right after the damage. That's exactly what you want. And that boss is made possible by an AUG. So really different type of fight without an AUG and their cauterize flame. The tank is in a lot more damage there if he doesn't have the assist of an AUG. Okay, so in these fights we have AoE group damage. Paying close attention to the Beguile, it can change the timer of the attack. And that's kind of what we're waiting for here. So we don't have any raid defensives, and the attack is 10 seconds away. So I do believe the call here is personals. Desperate Prayer and Fade is used. A couple of smites followed by the Radiance. And the collapse was scheduled to collapse after the damage. A couple of executes for 7 torments. And we have our second rift now. We're in good timing. The DR here is barrier. Collapse is scheduled to pop after this damage. Casting a palm in between combat. And looking at spells, we have Zephyr. If I remember right, I think this one was slightly late. So let's see. So we want to pay really close attention. Okay, so Beguile. He's beguiled for 10 seconds here. My pet and Rift are out. The collapse is scheduled to pop after this attack. We have a couple raptures on, and there's our collapse. Okay, so yeah, I now remember. The Zephyr was missed. I think we use it on next. Let's see. So we're a couple seconds away to the attack. Everyone's atoned. Let's send our Rift. We want it to collapse after the damage. And on each one of these two, we're fading. So anytime there's an attack, as long as you have the extra points banked into fade, you can cover yourself with fade every single attack and a personal shield depending. So I think we're a pretty tanky class. Always using flash shield in our rotation to queue our 10% reduction. We had that going there. So fade is 10, flash shield is 10, plus a shield, which is a million and a half on average. Makes us really tanky. Okay, so quickly drink. I have a 3 stack of palm on our Evoker. Let's see if I refresh it. So the better thing going into a fight like this, yeah, stack that 3 up to an 8. And this is a pull where we got to hold our breath. But I cover the first 20 seconds of the fight. So we're watching the Forge axes. There's our PI. Delaying just a little bit so it is timed right. Here goes our pet and our Rift. And pay close attention to our Shaman here. This hurts. Okay, and then the way this goes, the first attack is strong, the second attack is weaker. So this is just the Rift. And then the third attack is strong again. And then from there it goes weak, weak, strong, weak, weak, strong. So we kind of have to modify our rotation. So here comes the overlapping mechanic. We do want to throw extra spells, especially since I'm picked here. This is a Desperate Prayer phase. So personals are used on overlaps when you're selected with the double mechanic. So personal was used, pet and Rift was used because it was the stronger phase. And the next damaging event is weaker. So it times perfectly with our Rift. Notice how quickly I play this Rift as soon as it comes back. And all we have to do is work in our Radiance in between. We're covered. The next attack is also scheduled to be weak. So I have my Atonement ramp done. Rift is played immediately when it comes off cooldown. Fade is used, working in a Radiance in the middle, and we are covered. And you might have noticed by now too, a red dotted line randomly is popping up on people. I'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so this is the overlapping mechanic. I'm selected again, no. Desperate Prayer, so I use Pain Sup as my own personal. And the damage reduction for this overlap is barrier. Okay, so the next one we know will be weaker. It is just going to be the Rift. We want a dot on the enemy. We want full Atonements ramped in party. A shield is played for Word to the Pious. PI is out. Smiting as fast as I can. 2 penance into the Rift is the only priority. Baiting into the wall. Also might have noticed there's one attack I track on his nameplate. That's the frontal. I just like separating it out. Okay, so this attack is also the weaker one. Fade is queued in. Rift was played as soon as it was available. And this next one is our overlap. The modifying spell here is our Rapture. I am selected. Desperate Prayer is used. Zephyr is used. Fade is used, and we're in execute range, so we are golden. And 8 torments for Loman. So what I was saying is you might be noticing random kind of red dotted lines on my party frames, and that's tracking tempered in battle. Pro tip, that is something I think you should track as a healer when you're playing with a paladin. It is kind of random and spontaneous, and it can hurt, it can kill people. So you've probably even heard a lot of times in like your runs, oh, it was tempered in battle. Oh, it was tempered in battle. Well, it took me a while to get there, but my solution was, let me just track that so I can see when it's happening. It is a reactionary type of event, so you have to just be quick to react, and you can help mitigate that threat. Okay, so we have a lava bender in this pole. It is pretty particular. And to play safe here, I'm only sending the rift to open. So we're saving the pet and the rift for the sub 50 mark. Here's our PI, and we're approaching 50. We see it on the nameplate with that tick mark. So pet and rift are sent slightly preceding the damage. We just want to make sure we have coverage in the right time. Making sure I play my flash heal just to proc my defensives. Desperate Prayer and Fade were used. And I remember it now, kind of crazy, that that mechanic didn't fire. And I think it doesn't fire again, thankfully. Stack of Palm, only got a 5, but that's okay. Set my focus early on the Enforcer. Full Atonement Ramp, Pet and Rift. Pet, Rift, Penance, Death is kind of my my more common rotation these days. And a couple UI changes. So notice I have my chat box and most of my details hide in combat. I think that's a nice way to open up more of your screen space. And then I am tracking crowd control and kicks on nameplate. But another really nice change I brought in is I started taking those numbers off. So to have all of these fleeting values flashing at you with tenths of seconds, I just think it's a little bit overkill. It's not super vital to my role. And the swipe of the icon itself is enough of a timer, I think. We don't need tenths of a second, we just need estimates. And I think whenever you can take a value off the screen, the better. Okay, so also notice on nameplates here I'm tracking 2 attacks, but one of them is a tank buster. The other one is group-wide damage. So this fight with the lava bender is a little bit different. Since we have PI, this whole entire pole is going to die really quickly, so I don't wait to hold my pet. I send my pet rift on open, and the rift on the latter half. So raptors are going out, I'm ramping atonements. And here goes a rift. Notice here Lapaka is getting tempered. Health potion just to get through. Thanks. So in hindsight, potentially flip-flopping my rotation there. And right here, you need to LOS just to kind of make sure these guys come in. And I'm on the Flame Render. I think those are the most threatening for a tank. They might not have the most health in this pull, but it is a great place for me to put my heat. We have one attack on nameplates now. This is the Tank Buster. Our Tank Val here is doing pretty good at helping manage my defensives on him, but it is a good idea still to take it upon yourself and kind of track that Tank Buster cooldown so that you can make sure he's covered with something every attack. Then also we'll notice on the tank too, I don't think we'll get it in this pull anymore, he highlights white. The targeted cast weaker will highlight him white right before he's about to get hit. So that is a time to react with shields, potentially pain subs, barriers. But also food for thought. Let's watch this pull. Yep. So we barely pull this off. So opening with a handful of dots, since it is a big pull. We do have PI, thankfully. Quick decurses for the win. And on this one, I open with just the Rift. I'm trying to play a little bit extra safe here, backloading the pet in the Rift. There goes a pain sip on the tank, just to kind of ease the transition. Shadow Meld, I saw I was getting targeted with a cast during a mechanic. And here I'm ramping Rapture. This is to help my pain sup, and then to also help this transition we're about to have. Here goes the pet in the Rift. Q and Fade. Double Execute. Focus targeting to fall back to my Schism. Desperate Prayers used. And a defensive Dark Reprimand for the win there. I would have died otherwise. So that's a really good example. Yeah, barrier, we just gotta get through this. A really good example of kind of knowing when to and when not to use a defensive penance. It is our best single target heal. And sometimes you gotta do it. It is, it hurts to kind of do a defensive penance in a sense, but sometimes you got it. So we have tank busters here, noticing on nameplates. The first one, Val, is covered with Ardent Defender. He has that kind of green shield on his nameplate. And we send a pet and Rift, just pumping as much as we can. Switching targets to preserve my dots. We have a Rift to give. Here it goes. Rift and Penance. Worked in a Fear there just to help out with the crowd control. And doing everything I can to pry out that second Penance before the collapse. There it was. And we're on to boss. So we do want to send a pet and a Rift here, but I kind of delay it so that it handles the curses better. Here goes the pet in the Rift. Radiance after the curses to get the value of the Radiance itself. Random thought. So I use party nameplates to help me maximize my Radiance cast. Now that Radiance is getting buffed in a sense, it has a 40-yard range, I'm kind of excited to experiment with turning off party nameplates, because they interact with hostile nameplates and cause them to kind of bounce around. They're great utility for things like Radiance and Grip even, but I think I would rather my nameplates be more still. Okay, so you always want to have a renew on the tank here, and all we have to do is make sure we time our rotation right. We want Pet, Rift, Penance, Death, Radiance, all before the knockback, and then we just stagger defensives. So the first call here is Personals. Desperate Prayer and Fade was used. Pet, Rift, Penance, Death, Radiance was all cast before the knockback. And what that does is ensures everyone's covered for the collapse, which was timed after the hit. Okay, so I'm watching these two timers. The Curse of Entropy is upon us, shortly followed by the Twilight Buffet. So the Buffet is about 10 seconds away, knowing the collapse is around an 11-second timer. Here it goes. So Pet, Rift, Penance, Death. A couple of Smites plus the Radiance, all before the knockback. Hit, followed by Collapse. So that one was almost a miss. Thankfully it wasn't. So it's just, you got to think about, if an attack is 10 seconds away, it's 10 seconds plus its cast. So it ends up being more like 12. So if our Rift is 11 seconds, you just got to kind of keep that in mind, because we have to use its collapse to recover from these knocks. Okay, so I think this one is in better timing. Pet, Rift, Penance, Death, Radiance. I think this is Barrier, yeah. So barrier is set. The collapse was scheduled. And we're all recovered. And we just rinse and repeat. And the only thing to really prio in these moments in between is just getting our pet back. So we have to fiend for smites. We have to fiend for the mindbender. Fiend for the fiend. Okay, so Twilight Buffet is 5 seconds away. Perfect time for our rotation. So Pet, Rift, Penance, Death. Couple of smites plus a Radiance. And we're back to personals. And 6 torments. And definitely I always like keeping renews on tanks. Especially here. So a lot of people think like Pain Sup is a tank spell. I think Renew is a tank spell. So often it does have to hit other party members just for the atonement. But in a sense, I look at it as just buffing, you know, my atonement with one extra line item. So I like keeping Renews on tanks when I can. Okay, that one I had a personal shield on. The collapse happens after. A couple of executes on the ads for the win. So whenever you have boss fights with ads, always think of it as an opportunity for executes. Okay, I found my darkest red here. It's the Flame Render. This is my pre-selected target. It is the one that is kind of most threatening to the pull in a sense. Dropping Rapture here just to help out the Pain Sup. Tank is immune. We have curses going out as pink. And let's hit our rotation here. So I'm losing my dot, switch my target to preserve my dot, fall back to my schism with focus targeting. And that was an area, if you watch it back, you'll see what I'm talking about, how the nameplates just have a little too much movement in them. And it's because they're interacting with friendly nameplates. And it caused me to miss an extra torment there, essentially. I was fishing for that execute. Okay, so 1 pet, 2 rifts. Doing good. And then this is a dragon pull. Something you might have noticed already, but right above my radiance and shield icon, for very specific casts like this one, I bring it up in a fixed location just kind of right above my action buttons to make it really obvious to know like when to LOS. And then also right there before the LOS, I wanted to make sure the tank was atoned, renewed actually. So right before the hide, I make sure he had something he needed. So at least the dots would return healing to him. Okay, then this is just a rift. I cast Penance before the hide because it doesn't stop the channel. And this is a ballsy play, but we go straight into this pull. Focus target is still the dragon. We gotta kill it. Hold my executes there for a second. And in this fight, we have to pay really close attention to targeted casts. Here comes one of the Evoker. Oh, we have 2 targeted casts, that's right. So it's a little confusing, but we have the single target drain. That one was on Noth. Thankfully it was on Noth because all I gave him was Raptures. Okay, so focusing on the back guy. There's a Pain Sup. Arguably not the best Pain Sup. There was no stacking dot, which amplifies the damage. Okay, but here goes a Pet and Rift. And not a bad play to use defensive Penance. So I used a defensive Dark Reprimand into our Ret Paladin there. And I was targeted, so that was a Shadow Meld. Okay, I find my focus target. And this is just a Rift. We have the Rift out plus a defensive Penance for all of the healing. And a ton of sacks in party. So I've made a lot of changes to my grid too. And I think that is a really strong change to put Paladin externals in their own spot. Okay, and then that was a defensive Penance into our Ret Paladin. And that's kind of what you got to do here. So I am watching the timer of that attack on the nameplate. I'm trying not to just willy-nilly throw my penance, because that is our recovery spell for the single target dot. So I'll do something like, spend a charge of radiance for the proc, and I'm holding the proc, holding penance, and Q it on the single target attack. Okay, so this one is on our Shaman. He's atoned, which is enough, and he didn't have any dots. Okay, and that was health push in there. Not sure why I didn't play Desperate Prayer. Okay, so here goes the Rift. And a defensive penance. Okay, on me again. So I paints up and fade. Making sure I play Flash Heal. Okay, now we're getting to the point where we have to use these penance for healing. Let's see how I do it. I think there's one more, and I think it's me. Let's see how it plays out. Okay, defensive penance, a lot of heals on myself. That was help from the team. Arguably, I could have played Desperate Prayer there, but I wanted to save it for pull. So let's see if at least I use it on pull here. So the first attack comes so quickly, we have to play our pet and Rift ASAP. So here goes the pet Rift, penance, death. And on this attack, we're queuing in Zephyr. So this is pretty much a standard like 2-to-1 ratio fight for our pet to Rift. This 2-target cleave that is coming is really good for just the Rift. Also considering if you're picked, that's a great time for personals. The 5-man AoE is not the best for personals, not like this. I'm not picked. And another thing we really have to do here is use defensive penance probably every round. So that time, Lapaka got a defensive penance. We also have Tank Busters here. I noticed on that one he had his defensive running, so I did not shield him. And then this time, this Void Surge is Barrier, Pet and Rift. And I played Desperate Prayer there. Let's hope I don't get the 2-target cleave next time. And these little guys are really good places to fish for executes. So I just got 2 executes and 7 torments. A couple of atonements in party. Here goes the Rift before the damage. You want to cast a Radiance in case you need the defensive proc. And then that sucked. I really couldn't see anything below me, but thankfully the tank gave me a big assist there because I got tentacled. Okay, then this is a Rapture, doing it to help my paints up and to assist this first attack. So we don't have any group defensives. Flash Heal, Fade, Pet and Rift. So the assist was the Rapture. Desperate Prayer wasn't up, so Fade and a Flash Heal for the 20% damage reduction. And just hitting your rotation like hella. Okay, so this is just the Rift, using a defensive penance where we need. Oof. That one really spooked me. So I think the Paladin came in big handy there. Talent Bird and I were stacked. I guess it's one of those things that takes 2 to tango. And let's see, we have Zephyr coming up here. I believe it's used on the next Void Surge. Notice that's the only timer I'm tracking. Pet and Rift are out preemptive of the damage. Fade is used. Zephyr is used. And we just hit our rotation. Working a Radiance per usual. And I'm fishing here for an execute. Let's see. 2 executes. This one I got wasn't great here. Oh my god. So if he didn't clear there, I would have been totally trapped. Okay, I was a little late getting there, so I had to use the Rift ASAP, giving some single target heals out. So the Rift in the background is really good for like flooding heals, but in a 16 like this, you have to give a single target too. So like flash heals, a shield, wheel mode proc, something like that. Okay, So Raptors are out to assist. Here goes the pet. Spamming as much as I can here. And rip. So if anyone has stayed tuned in up until this point, you might notice the timer was -2. So it was real sad. I've tried this key more than once. We had a really clean run. As you saw, we only had one death, and the key was failed. So I do think that's kind of the nature of these high keys. It is more punishing than rewarding. But we're all kind of saying, you know, like we're trying to analyze, where did we have loss? You know, because a key, even a high key, should have room for one death. And we still lost, even with a clean run. So if I were to kind of analyze this going back, I don't think the death was the fault. I think maybe our damage. And not to say our damage, they didn't do their job, but what we've considered is taking Lapaka as a 3-minute elemental. And then we'd have more firepower in these key spots where things did drag a little. And I think all of the initial pulls with dragons, they seemed like they did drag a little. I don't think it's ever a good practice, though, to only point fingers at others. So you might have noticed, or you might not have noticed, but I don't have any tempered potions right now. So what happened is before this key, I bought them. They're in my mail. If you look, I have mail. And I didn't loot them. So I only had 4 potions going into this when I easily could have had 6 or 7 plays. That could have saved 2 seconds. Multiple things could have been done differently. Sad to have a failed key after a good, successful run. But I am determined to get this one. Still in the running for title, so please cross your fingers for me. And yeah, looking at the damage, 518 overall, pretty good. And yeah, so thanks everyone for tuning in. And until next time, Disc out.